On the balcony of an apartment, Lorenzo smoked, his gaze lost in the void. The gray and heavy sky seemed to reflect his state of mind. Each drag of his cigarette calmed him for a brief moment, but immediately afterward the anguish returned, stronger than before. He was angry with everything and everyone, with Serena, his wife, with the job he hated, and with his own life that seemed to want to give him no respite. He felt like a prisoner of an existence that he no longer recognized as his own. Every day was a constant battle against an invisible enemy, and it seemed that nothing could go right. Before continuing, subscribe to our channel and activate the bell. But he failed to realize how much his attitude contributed to his own unhappiness. Instead, he continued to take out his frustration on everyone around him, convinced that it was the others who needed to change. The cold, late afternoon air filled his lungs with every deep breath he took. Every drag on his cigarette gave him a sense of false control, of apparent calm, but he knew it didn't last long. When he closed his eyes that day, for a brief moment, he hoped the world around him would disappear and all his worries would evaporate with the smoke that escaped his lips. But that hope was just another illusion. He kept telling himself that things would get better, that life would eventually turn out differently. But these promises, which had once comforted him, now rang hollow and meaningless. Each time he held on to them, the result was only deeper disappointment. He knew he was deceiving himself, yet he couldn't stop. His discomfort continued to grow, like a black cloud that gathered above him, never dissipating. Through the kitchen window, Lorenzo watched Serena move in silence. She set the table with her usual care, as she did every evening. Once, that familiar scene would have brought him comfort, but now it irritated him. Every gesture of Serena, a woman he had once loved deeply, now seemed an insult. When had he started to feel repelled by the woman he had chosen to share his life with? Just a few years ago, he had thought they were happy. Now, her every action made him feel sick. It wasn't Serena's fault, yet Lorenzo blamed her for everything that was wrong in his life. His stagnant career, his daily dissatisfaction, everything seemed somehow linked to her. He took another drag on his cigarette, hoping the smoke would quell the resentment he felt growing inside him. But there was no relief, only a growing tension. He angrily stubbed out the cigarette and went back into the house. The warm air hit him, but it did not reassure him. He felt an overwhelming desire to start a fight. He wanted to argue. He wanted to vent, to let out the anger that was consuming him. Serena immediately noticed his tension. "You don't seem well," she said in a calm voice, trying to understand his state of mind. She hoped that, after smoking, he would be a little calmer. "Are you okay?" she asked with a hint of concern. Lorenzo stared at her, the rancor burning inside him reflected in his eyes. "What does this mean? Do I look pale? Or do I look like your lover?" His voice was laced with venom, cutting words that not even he recognized as his own anymore. Serena was surprised, not understanding where such malice came from. It was clear that something inside him was breaking, but she couldn't figure out what. "You've been treating me so badly lately," Serena said, trying to keep her composure. "If there's something wrong, we can talk about it. I'm here for you," she continued, her tone sincere. She was trying to salvage what was left of their relationship, but every attempt seemed to be met with a wall of resentment. The silence that followed was suffocating. Lorenzo looked at her. The desire to say more mean things to her was strong, but a part of him knew that it wouldn't solve anything. He was trapped in a cycle of frustration and hatred that he couldn't get out of. Suddenly, he spat out, "I think it's time for you to lose a few pounds. You're becoming a whale." That sentence cut the air like a knife. Serena remained still, unable to respond. It wasn't the first time Lorenzo had tried to hurt her like this, but this time it was different. She felt that something inside her had finally broken. The next day, Serena confided in Claudia, her best friend. She told her about that last fight and how Lorenzo had become increasingly cruel in the last few months. "You don't have to put up with all this," Claudia said, furious at what was happening. "You don't deserve to be treated like this." "You think he's jealous of me? I can't explain this change in him," Serena said, confused. "Yes, but not of another man," Claudia replied. "He's jealous of you, of your strength, of your growth. Since you got that promotion, you earn more than him. Everyone respects you. Men like him don't know how to handle a woman who is becoming more and more independent." Those words stuck in Serena's mind. Everything Lorenzo said or did seemed to confirm what Claudia had told her. It wasn't love that made him act that way. It was fear. Fear of losing her. Fear that Serena was growing too big for him. Weeks passed, and Serena continued to reflect on those words. Every time she looked at Lorenzo, she saw a man trapped in his own insecurities, unable to face his own weakness. A man who would rather destroy everything around him than face the truth. A few months later, Serena made the decision she knew she had to make. She asked for a divorce. There was nothing left to save. Lorenzo was not changing, and she could no longer afford to live with a man who humiliated her and destroyed her self-esteem day after day. She deserved more. She deserved to be happy. Lorenzo, left alone, slowly began to understand the enormity of his mistake. Every attempt to reconcile with Serena failed. She no longer wanted to know about him. For the first time in his life, Lorenzo found himself confronted with the emptiness and loneliness that he himself had created. Serena, on the other hand, felt a new lightness, a freedom she had never felt. She had freed herself not only from a failed marriage, but also from the chains that kept her tied to the fear of not being enough. Finally, she was ready to live the life she deserved. Lorenzo, alone in his empty apartment, understood too late what he had lost. He tried to fill the void with other relationships, but no woman remained. Every time he showed his true character, he was abandoned like his marriage. In the end, he realized that without Serena, his life no longer had any meaning. Did you like this story? Leave a comment below. Thanks for watching the video till the end, and see you next story.